Amazing people. Ain't no telling. They claim it. Some people say 12 million people on the slave trade. They might have bought maybe one or two boats over here, but I believe we are the additional people because we don't even look like African people. That's right. You can get the blackest, you can get Project Black out the project, the blackest nigga in the project, and get an African, the blackest African, you can tell which one is which. We just don't look like them. Period. That's right. I think they had a few people from Africa that came over here, maybe on one or two boats, but they had millions and millions of people already here. When that so-called Christopher Columbus and that other bastard and the Spanish and all them people got here.
Years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land.
Sister gonna share something. I just told her that my mother Chickasaw, Okinawa, Mississippi. So she gonna shed a little more light.
So
on
native
my people,
black people.
Yes.
That is talking about. Everybody came over and we were all slaves. No, you can even check it on the internet, right?
Right.
Before the continent shifted, which is what we call in this Kali Yuga and stuff. You can check from all the way from Tibet, and you'll see exactly where. Check Hanumanji. That's in all of the pyramids and Mayan stuff. It's right there. You got it written in Sanskrit. Just look for the elephant. I mean, what the elephant doing over this side here? And from there, take your own stuff and find out your own history. Because all of it coming.
What do you know about there's pyramids here in the Americas?
The way before them. They all think the way before all of that. So just check all the pyramids right down inside there. It's your own hometown. Just go and look at whatever they call in cartouche or whatever.
Right. And your family comes from where? You say?
Oh, I'm Guyanese. Okay. All the way down in the Amazon. We live among the Mapuche.
Okay.
Go on the internet and check the Mapuches.
I've read a little bit about that's enough, sister.
For some reason, if you're this color, that's what is supposed to be your story, regardless of whether you was born here or not. And that is a problem, because what that does is it gives us a false sense of inferiority, and it gives another people a false sense of superiority. When these people that they talk about who are Native Americans and Grand Chieftains today, talking about the ones that's opening the casinos and all this other stuff, they are all descendants of people from Tartary. And how can we prove this? This is because way back in the days, there was an empire in ancient China called the Xiang Dynasty. And the Xiang decided, under a man named Hu Shen, another Moor, decided to come over here and find their cousins, who they referred to as the Western Ixi, or Ixet, or Yi. And so when they came here, they found an Olmecs here that was already here from time immemorial, and they both merged their culture. When that culture merged together, they became one people. And then out of that people, we get the people today we call the Hopi, the Anasazi, the so-called Pueblo cultures, and all of that, right? It wasn't until maybe 16,000 years later when the Hindus was exiled from India by the Sindhi Moors, or the Moors from Old Bombay and all of that, kicked them out. After the Hindu invasions, they all was brought over in boats and brought over here. When they came here, they then mixed with the so-called autochthon or Aboriginal people who were already here, and then those Aboriginal people allowed them to stay in a certain area. And they adopted them into certain aspects of the culture. This is where you get people called the Mixtecs and the Zapotecs and the Toltecs and these type of people. They were all descended from the Olmecs. Now the Olmec people, the original constituency, started to move further up. They started to move further up from La Venta, Palenque, Chichen Itza, and move further up into what we would now call the Midwestern United States, and then further, and then after a certain amount of time, they dwelled there and then started to disperse into sub-tribes and nations. Some of those sub-tribes and nations, one of the biggest one was called the Yamasee. I don't know if any people saw the movie Apocalypto, but in that movie there was a blue dye that they were painting the people who were going to be sacrificed in. That blue dye actually comes from red clay that's found in Georgia, the red clay in Georgia. And it was an old custom that the queens would ingest some of the red clay in Georgia because it would help with the magical properties that they were trying to pass on to the babies. And a lot of autochthon people still do that to this day. So what happened was the Yamasee Nation basically...
What happened was
the Yamasee Nation established themselves in what we call Georgia and all that.
And then one of the
and then one of the... I'm sorry.
And one of the
And then one of the sub-nations called the Southern Cree and then the Northern Creek decided to go against and fight the Yamasee. There was a big war between that, and then the Yamasee basically lost the war, and their women were then brought in as squaws, meaning captured queens, to populate with the Cree, the Northern Cree, and the Southern Creek. And once they had those babies, that became another nation now. That nation was then known as the Seminole. And then the Seminole were then given land back down in what we right here call Al-Andalusia, and they came back down here.
Amalgamate native people with other races to get rid of the Indians. Now, when you look at the Byrd papers, and you would read his diary on April the 7th, 1728, he actually visited our reservation in Jerusalem, Cortland, Virginia. And what's so interesting about that, he described how our people look. He said the young men came out and their faces were painted and they made all kinds of grotesque figures and they danced for him to the sound of a gore drum stretched tight with an animal skin. Then he said the young women came out and they were tall and shapely and dressed in their finery. Their hair was braided, and they had white and blue conch shells in their hair that hung like locks and around their neck. And then they had wrapped around their body a match coat, which was red and blue, which is a shawl, that fitted loosely about their body, that their mahogany skin shone through. Then he went. Let me get this point. He went on to say that these dark angels would make exceptional wives for the English planters, and their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations. Unquote. That's a quote that he made.
So that was the whole goal, was to try to bleach out, as they say.
Yeah, but it kind of tells you that first Americans were a rich brown people. They were mahogany in color. That these dark angels would make exceptional wives for the English planters, and their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations. That these dark angels would make exceptional wives for the English planters, and their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations. That these dark angels would make exceptional wives for the English planters, and their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations. That these dark angels would make exceptional wives for the English planters, and their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations.